Welcome back, SEC football fans, to the Southeastern Coverage Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Slemp, and usually next to me we got the co-host, Zane Ratliff, but he cannot join me today because he just got his wisdom teeth taken out. So it's just me this week. This is episode 4 of season 2, even though there's been about 10 weeks of college football. We've been busy recently with school and a lot of other stuff, but we're finally back with the podcast, and hopefully we can do this for the rest of the season. So, yeah, stories for today. We're going to do Georgia and their situations down in Athens, and also going to talk about Florida and Dan Mullen and some of the firings that have been going on and how the fans are feeling down there in Gainesville. And after those two stories, I'm going to go straight into the SEC game predictions for this weekend. There's 8 games that we're going to talk about, and some of these are going to be good ones, so we'll get into that after the stories. So, first story, we're going to talk about what's happening down in Georgia. So, first of the two stories I got is Arian Smith for Georgia. He's a wide receiver, if some of you guys did not know. He reportedly broke his leg in practice. It was either yesterday or today, and he will be out for the year. So that's obviously a huge loss for Georgia. If you lose a playmaker on any team, it can definitely be hard. But I really don't think Georgia will be affected by this very much, just because they just have so much depth at every position. And when you have that much depth, I mean, you gotta feel good about it. Even if you lose a guy like Arian Smith, I really don't think this will hurt them that much. So that's the first bit of bad news in Athens, but the second one, linebacker Adam Anderson from Georgia. I'm sure you guys have all heard about this. If you haven't, you're hearing about this now. He was charged with rape. It was a rape allegation back in October. It was October 29th, I believe, was where it first surfaced to the media. And a couple days ago, he just turned himself into police, and he's been arrested and charged with felony rape, and that is just terrible news for a guy that had so much potential. I mean, as I said, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. Yeah, I mean, it's just terrible to see anybody experience this, especially a college football student-athlete with just so much upside and potential. I mean, it's just terrible to see. So, yeah, that's bad news for Georgia Bulldogs. It also is bad news for their defense because they're losing a big guy, a big leader on that defense. But also, as I said earlier, they just have so much depth, and they could probably fit in a 5-star behind him. So Georgia might see a little bit of problems with losing these guys, but I really don't think it will hurt them that much as they go into Tennessee's matchup this weekend. So, done with Georgia. Next story, I'm going to talk about Florida and their situation with Dan Mullen. So, Florida obviously has had a very disappointing season right now. They're standing at 4-5 with a really bad loss to South Carolina this past Saturday. They lost 40-17 to first-year head coach Shane Beamer in a struggling South Carolina team. So, I've talked to some I've talked to some Florida fans lately, and I've heard mixed emotions about what they want to do with Dan Mullen. Obviously, if you guys haven't heard, over the past couple of days, there have been some firings. I believe it was on Monday. They fired defensive coordinator Todd Grantham and offensive line coach John Hevesy. And this could maybe lead to Dan Mullen being fired at the end of the year, maybe even earlier if this disappointment keeps stacking up for Florida. Obviously, Florida fans seeing that their team is 4-5, they can never be satisfied. And I've talked to some Florida fans, and some of them have said they should keep Dan Mullen, and they're just struggling right now. And some of them have just said fire him, and he needs to be out. So, my opinion is, I've seen that Florida fans, they really want to make that big step and get to the national championship level, get to those New Year's Six Bowls, win the SEC East, win the SEC championship. And that's the only way that you can really make that big step as a program in the SEC. And Florida fans are really wanting that. And right now, in the past couple of years, they haven't been getting that from Dan Mullen, and I think they're finally tired of it. They're finally saying, all right, this guy, we've been pretty successful over the past couple of years, but he's not getting us over that hump. So how much longer are we going to wait until we finally decide to get rid of him? And I think some Florida fans are finally just saying we need to get rid of him and start like a new culture and get a new head coach, and maybe we can get over that hump in a few years. But some other fans have said that this is just a bad year. We've needed to fire these guys like Ty Grantham, and it shouldn't affect Dan Mullen's spot as a head coach. Obviously, that loss to South Carolina really put him on the hot seat, and we'll see what happens down in Gainesville over the next couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting to see. All right. After those two stories, right now I'm just going to go into the games for this week. So I'm going to save the first one for last. That's going to be Georgia versus Tennessee, my beloved Volunteers. So first game, we're going to go New Mexico State going down to Tuscaloosa and playing the number 2 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. This game is a noon start on SEC Network. And listen to this, folks. Listen to this. Alabama is a 51-point favorite this game. You heard me right. They are a 51-point favorite. New Mexico State is a really weak opponent. They're 1-8 right now. And I am going to pray that they just don't get absolutely murdered by Alabama this weekend. So, obviously, Alabama has had some kind of underwhelming performances in the last week or two. They obviously did not expect such a average performance against LSU this past Saturday, and some Alabama fans are getting worried and are kind of concerned. But Alabama's still at that number 2 spot, and this game is a very winnable game. It shouldn't be a game that any Alabama fan has to worry about. So I got Alabama huge in this game, and I don't know if they'll be able to cover that 51-point spread, but we'll see. Next game is a pretty interesting one. So we got Mississippi State visiting Auburn. Auburn coming off a tough loss. They came off a tough loss against Texas A&M, and they only scored 3 points in that game, which is kind of concerning. But they're playing Mississippi State this week, and Mississippi State, they are not a bad opponent. It's not an opponent that you can look over. They've got good wins against Kentucky and Texas A&M, who beat Auburn. So this is going to be a good game to watch. I think Will Rogers is going to have a big game. He's been playing pretty well. So, yeah, I think Auburn is still going to take this one, but close, very close. I think Bo Nix is going to bounce back from a very underwhelming performance against Texas A&M. So, I think Bo Nix will bounce back. Tank Bigsby's going to have a big game on the ground, and Auburn's going to beat Mississippi State. Next game, we got Samford visiting Florida. Obviously, as I said earlier, Florida coming off a very bad loss to South Carolina. They're sitting at 4-5 right now, but they're playing a 3-5 Samford team. So this game shouldn't be any problem for Florida. And if they do, I really think Dan Mullen's going to be out in Gainesville. So I think Florida, even though they've struggled in the past couple of weeks, I still think they should take care of Samford easily. And I got Florida big here. So, next game is South Carolina going to Columbia to visit Missouri. This is a very good game in my opinion. So, Missouri, they looked like a better team coming into this season, and they've kind of underwhelmed and underperformed in some games. But they're playing South Carolina, who just came off a big win against Florida. South Carolina sitting at 5-4, still having bowl hopes. So this game's at 4:00 p.m. on SEC Network, and the spread is even. You don't see that often. The spread is even between these two teams. So This will be an interesting game to watch. Missouri has been giving up a lot of points to other SEC opponents, especially Tennessee. They gave up 62 to them. South Carolina's had some problems at the quarterback position with just guys that are coming in. They just don't have much depth there, and they're having to bring in guys that don't have much experience at all at this level. And South Carolina, coming off that big win against Florida, I think they're going to have another big win going down to Missouri, beating another SEC East opponent, and they're going to be bowl eligible this weekend. I think Shane Beamer really needs to win this game to kind of get that fan base going, even though they were already going out to the Florida game. I still think that Shane Beamer needs to really be bowl eligible and show that his team is legit and that he's legit this year. So I think South Carolina's going to ride that Florida win and beat Missouri this weekend. All right, next game. This is game day this week. College game day is visiting Oxford. We got Texas A&M visiting Ole Miss. So Ole Miss has had a pretty good year this year. Their offense has been electric. Nobody didn't expect that. But they're playing a tough opponent in Texas A&M. It just came off a huge win against Auburn in College Station. This game's at 7 on ESPN. Texas A&M right now is a 2.5-point favorite. So here's my opinion on this game. I really think if Ole Miss's offense comes out guns blazing, scoring all this touchdowns, scoring points, everything's working, run game, pass game, everything, Ole Miss will win this game. But I don't think that is going to happen on Saturday night. I think Texas A&M's defense is really going to step up, stop Matt Corral, and stop the run game. They got a very good defensive front in College Station and Texas A&M. But yeah, I think Texas A&M's defense is the most important aspect of this game, and I think they're going to step up, and Texas A&M is going to win this game close. All right, next game is Kentucky versus Vanderbilt. So this is an interesting one. I'm just kidding. I got Kentucky big in this one. I think Kentucky is going to bounce back from that loss to Tennessee, and they're sitting at 6-3 right now, so their season is not absolutely in the garbage. But they had a tough loss to Tennessee last weekend. It's a big win for my Volunteers. But they're going to go to Vandy this weekend and just crush them. So I got Kentucky big. That game's at 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Next game is number 25, Arkansas, visiting LSU. LSU, they've been a kind of confusing team this year. They beat a good Florida team while they were still good and ranked. They gave Alabama a challenge this past weekend, but I think Arkansas is going to go to Baton Rouge and steal one from the Tigers, and they're going to improve to 7-3. Arkansas is a 3-point favorite right now. This game's at 7:30 on SEC Network, and yeah, I'm not going to go into much detail about this. I think Arkansas is going to win this game. All right, final game I got is number 1, Georgia Bulldogs going to Knoxville, visiting the Tennessee Volunteers. This game's at 3:30 on CBS. Right now, Georgia is a 20-point favorite. And the big story this year for Georgia has been their defense. Their defense is outstanding, and they are averaging less than a touchdown given up per game. So Tennessee, coming off a big win against Kentucky, they're going to really try to make this game hard to win for the Bulldogs. And in my opinion, my Volunteers are going to score the most points that any team has scored on Georgia this year. The record is 13 this year. So I think they'll exceed that scoring record this year, and they'll exceed that score, but I still think Tennessee is going to lose by at least 2 touchdowns. Georgia's just absolutely dominant this year. All right, that's it for this week of the Southeastern Coverage Podcast. Zane will hopefully join us next week, and we're going to try to get some athletes on here soon if they will respond to us and agree to do this. So I'm your host, Drew Slemp, and we will see you next week.